College football is a staple of Saturday nights in America, a unique atmosphere of school loyalty and the excitement of watching the next potential NFL greats. However, college football has its wacky stories and skeletons in its closet that are worth exploring. I'll be using the Iceberg format, and for anybody who doesn't know or forgot how this trend works, the information will be laid out in tiers. Starting at the top and making its way down to the bottom, the topics will become more dark or unknown. This iceberg I created myself, and while there isn't a specific theme with the progression, it does follow the general idea that the deeper you go, the more out there the topics and information gets. So without further ado, let's dive into the college football iceberg. As what's typical with the icebergs that I generally make myself, tier 1 is going to be some very surface level topics that most people are going to know about, if not some maybe obscure, popular information that even the most diehard fans know a little bit about, and that we'll be setting up future things that come up in the iceberg, so that way when I bring them up flippantly, those who weren't initially aware of what these things are will now understand what I mean when I bring up these really objectively known facts for most fans. John Heisman. John Heisman was a football and basketball coach in college and had a 186, 70, and 18 record as a football coach. He coached for Oberlin, Akron, Auburn, Clemson, Georgia Tech, the University of Pennsylvania, Washington and Jefferson, and Rice. He played offensive lineman in college at 158 pounds, and in 1893, while coaching at Butchell, Heisman invented the current center-to-quarterback snap exchange because his quarterback was too tall for the traditional rolling or kicking the ball back to the quarterback. In 1895, he began coaching at Auburn and came up with the idea of his quarterback using a hike or a hep call to start the play. While watching a game between Pop Warner's Georgia and the UNC Tar Heels, a punt was nearly blocked, turning into a 70-yard illegal forward pass. After seeing this, Heisman was one of the main proponents for legalizing forward passes. While he was coaching at Georgia Tech, he came up with the idea of posting the down and distance on the scoreboard, and it was his idea for games to be broken down into 4 quarters for safety reasons. He retired in 1927 after coaching for Rice for 4 seasons, and he passed away from a pneumonia in 1937. Due to his overall influence in the game of football, the trophy given to the best player in college football is now known as the Heisman in honor of his legacy. The new CFP. The original CFP format, or college football playoffs, was the top 2 ranked schools in the nation playing for the title of best team in college football. The current format is the top 4 schools at the end of the season playing a 2-round playoff format before playing in the final national game. The new format has 12 teams, the 6 highest ranked conference champions, and then after that the next 6 highest ranked teams. The 4 highest ranked conference champions receive a first round bye into the quarterfinals. The purpose of the 6 highest ranked conference champions is to address the complaints of conferences having multiple teams in the top 4, while other conferences had no representation despite having champions. This new CFP or college football playoff will begin in the 2024-2025 college football season. The Ranking Committee. The Ranking Committee consists of 13 members, a dedicated group of high-integrity football experts with experience as coaches, student-athletes, college administrators, and journalists, along with sitting athletic directors. They are in charge of ranking the top 25 teams in college football each year, including the top 4 for the playoffs. They are also in charge of selecting the 6 bowl games to be played on New Year's Day, which are some of the biggest games of the year. Things the committee takes into account for selections include create competitive matchups, attempt to avoid rematches of regular season games and repeat appearances in specific bowls, and considering geography of the teams. Paying recruits. Several cases of teams using boosted money and other benefits to financially support or entice players in their schools have been recorded over the years of college football. This is always being seen as having an unfair advantage for schools that have more of a budget and is seen as being immoral in recruiting standards. The NCAA usually meets this with heavy punishments, and this drove the conversation on NIL deals for athletes who relied upon financial assistance from schools to be able to play. NIL. NIL stands for Name, Image, and Likeness. It's a modern way for student athletes to be paid without facing punishments from the NCAA. Examples of modern NIL deals in college football was Bryce Young and Bijan Robinson. Bryce Young was paid $1 million to be sponsored by Cash App, which required him to do social media advertising and appearing at sponsored events. This made him 7 figures before even taking a snap for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Bijan Robinson inked a deal with Dijon Mustard Company to produce Bijan's mustard amongst a plethora of other deals while he was in college. Scholarships. FBS schools are allowed 85 full-ride scholarships, while FCS schools are allowed 63. This provides payment for a student to attend the school with costs such as room and board as well as tuition covered. These are used as a way to entice players to come to their school with a promise of not having to pay for their education to play football for their team. Tier 2 is going to be filled with famous scandals and other things that common college football fans and even normal football fans who don't really follow college football that often will have heard about or should know about, since they are such large events that are frequently brought up in the history of the sport. SMU death penalty. In 1987, SMU had been discovered to be paying some of its players money to come commit to their schools. The major player in this was Eric Dickerson, who spontaneously decommitted from Texas A&M and went to SMU. In 1985, they were banned from bowl games for 2 seasons and stripped of 45 scholarships over a 2-year period. Then Chairman of the Board Bill Clemens exposed the 9 biggest booster culprits. The NCAA came up with the death penalty but neglected to use it for the current transgression. SMU agreed to pay students they already promised money until their graduation as they slowly phased out paying recruits. After being cut from the program, David Stanley came forward on national media and began the opening of the floodgates that climaxed with a horrific interview of sports director Dale Henson. February 25th, 1987, the death penalty was levied. This was announced by NCAA Director of Enforcement David Burst, who fainted moments after giving the sentence. Following this death penalty, SMU achieved 1 winning season from 1989 to 2008. The death penalty consisted of canceling the entire 1987 SMU season, as well as 4 games in 1988. Extended the probation period 4 more years into 1990 from their initial 1985 scandal. SMU was allowed only 6 assistant coaches, 4 of which were not allowed to do any off-campus recruiting. They were also banned from bowl games and televised games until 1989, so 2 years. Since the death penalty, only 2 coaches have a winning record with SMU, Sonny Dykes from 2017 to 2021, and Rhett Lashley in the 2022 season. Reggie Bush. In 2005, the USC running back recorded 1,740 rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, and 478 receiving yards with 2 additional touchdowns there, bringing to 2,218 all-purpose scrimmage yards and 18 touchdowns. Bush allegedly received payment from a marketing firm while playing for USC. This caused his 2005 Heisman Trophy to be vacated, which NCAA would not give back, and to this day says that even with the new NIL rules, that the Heisman will not be returned. The day of this recording, Reggie Bush has just filed a grievance and a lawsuit against the NCAA to try to get his Heisman back. Bobby Petrino. BannerSociety.com has a great chronological timeline of each Bobby Petrino scandal during his time as a football coach, so I'm just going to go through and read what their timeline says of all the things he's gotten into. In 2001, after only 1 season as a Jaguars offensive coordinator, Petrino takes the Auburn offensive coordinator job, allegedly without telling Jacksonville head coach Tom Coughlin. 2003, after 1 year at Auburn, Petrino takes the Louisville head coaching job. He then interviews with Auburn boosters for the Tigers head coaching position behind the back of his eventual 2-time boss, Louisville athletic director, Tom Urich, and former boss, Auburn head coach Tommy Tuberville, who had yet to be fired. From 2004 to 2006, Petrino interviews for at least 3 other head coaching jobs, and is reportedly in touch with multiple other teams at one point. I'm not interested in any other coaching jobs. He gets a raise. Petrino signs a 10-year contract with Louisville, telling the world he isn't going anywhere. In less than a year, Petrino opts out of his contract and gets hired as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. Without even making a full season through as a head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, he leaves a 78-word letter posted in each team's locker room and gets hired as the head coach of Arkansas. In April, the Arkansas head coach Petrino crashes his motorcycle, suffering injuries. It's later discovered that his passenger on the bike was a 25-year-old former Arkansas volleyball player and current football team assistant with whom he was having an affair. He'd hired her over several far more qualified candidates. Petrino attempts to hide the assistant's presence at the crash, asking the witness not to call 911. Arkansas eventually releases a statement saying Petrino was alone in the crash. 10 days later, Petrino was fired after he, among other things, lied to the athletic director Jeff Long. There was also the revelation that Petrino had paid his mistress $20,000. January 8th, 2014, Petrino was hired back again as the head coach of Louisville. In November of 2016, Petrino twice denies having any knowledge of leaked Wake Forest game plan materials as the minor scandal known as WikiLeaks begins. Louisville later suspends an assistant coach on Petrino's favorite side of the ball after that coach admits he shared leaks with defensive coaches. Therefore, if Petrino really didn't know, he was one of only a handful of coaches on this entire staff who didn't. In November of 2018, Louisville fires Petrino amid a disastrous season. The Cardinals are so eager to get rid of him that they swallow an unusual $14 million buyout. Overall, Bobby Petrino is seen as one of the worst NFL coaches and college coaches of all time and is constantly getting himself in mess after mess after mess that needs to be cleaned up, whether it was the Louisville contract that he left after 1 year despite signing a 10-year contract, the Arkansas situation with the assistant that he hired and eventually paid, or now with Louisville where he just ruined their recruiting a second time around. So Petrino is really just persona non grata in college football, but he currently has a position as the offensive coordinator for Texas A&M Aggies, so I guess he's still getting paid. Manti Te'o. Manti suffered a great loss at the beginning of his senior season for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish when on September 12, 2012, both his grandmother and girlfriend died on the same day. Despite the tragedy, he still had a phenomenal season which included 7 interceptions and winning the Butkus Award for the nation's best linebacker. In January 2013, it was discovered that Manti had been catfished by a man who would put on a fake female voice to lure Manti into a phony relationship. Many media outlets accused Manti of being in on the scheme and creating a media storm to either cover up his homosexuality or help gain support to push for himself to win the Heisman. 2022 saw the release of a documentary surrounding the situation on Netflix called Untold: The Girlfriend Who Didn't Exist, which I watched and researched for this video, and it's really well made. I highly recommend anybody who hasn't seen it yet to go check it out. The fifth down game. 1990, Colorado versus Missouri. Colorado was hoping to not get upset and keep their national championship hopes alive. On the final critical drive of the game, the Colorado gets it down to the 3-yard line. First and goal from the 3, a spike to stop the clock. Second down and goal from the 3, a 2-yard run to the 1-yard line. Colorado uses its final timeout. Head referee forgets to signal the line judge to tell the down marker to change it to third down, as he's going to inform Colorado's head coach that there was the last timeout used. The line judge and entire chain crew get distracted by a fan being brought down to the track after suffering a heart attack behind the bench at the 50-yard line. Second down and goal from the 1, a run stop short. Third down and goal from the 1, spike. This really would have been the 4th down. Fifth down and goal from the 1, Colorado's quarterback takes it in for the touchdown on an option play. Missouri students had rushed on the field thinking they've won. Replay makes it look like as though the quarterback is short regardless, but the play stands and Colorado wins. Missouri fired their head coach by the end of the season and finishes the entire year with a 4-7 record. Colorado goes on to win the national championship. This is one of the most notorious football game scandals itself, due to a lack of communication between refs and chain crew and an unprecedented distraction during a timeout. There was an extra down given to this team that was trying to avoid being upset by this bad Missouri team, and this team uses that mistake to controversially win in a different way as well, looking like that they didn't even score the touchdown at the end of the game, but the call stands regardless, and that team goes on to win a national championship, which they might not even be able to do if they lose this game. So it's really one of those most talked about games just because of how impactful that random 5th down mistake was on the season itself. Tier 3 has less well-known scandals. However, these will not have as much dark or disturbing content as the ones in Tier 4 and Tier 5 will have, so this is where we put them as opposed to putting them in Tier 2. Alabama program nearly killed. In the year 2000, Alabama fought to recruit defensive lineman Albert Means, with the recruiting efforts involving a booster paying Means' high school head coach $150,000 to convince him to play for Bama. In addition to this, while under oath, Means admitted his coach also had another student take his ACT for him so he could qualify to go to school. This was the 4th infraction in the previous 14 years and made the Crimson Tide eligible for the death penalty, which hadn't been handed out since SMU in 1987. What saved the program was the commitment of prominent local attorney and Alabama's compliance director taking action to see that the NCAA would believe that no further commitment violations would occur. While not the death penalty, Bama still received a 5-year probation, 2-year bowl ban, and losing out on 21 scholarships over 3 years. Seeing where Alabama is today in the current college football zeitgeist, imagining that they would have been dead and had suffered a similar fate to SMU back in 1987 would have played out really differently to today. Eric Ramsey. Eric Ramsey was a defensive back for the Auburn Tigers who accused the program of racist tendencies in paying recruits in 1991. Ramsey alleged that he was assisted from his head coach in getting a $9,000 loan, was given steaks by a booster to help him gain weight as a freshman, had a few car loan payments covered for him, and was paid an allowance of $300 a month. Ramsey came forward with 70 secretly recorded tapes that he showed conversations between himself, Auburn's coach, and a prominent booster. There was initial skepticism around the tapes, but all were later verified by an audio specialist as being legitimate. The NCAA laid sanctions on the school, banning them from 2 years of bowl games, a 1-year ban from television, and losing 13 scholarships over 4 years. Coach Dye was banned from campus until 1995. Craig James. Craig James played college football for SMU before having a career in the NFL for the New England Patriots. James then moved in as a sports anchor for Fox and beginning a political career. Craig's son Adam played for the Texas Tech Red Raiders under head coach Mike Leach, which spawned a messy allegation against Leach, and that led to Leach's suspension and eventual firing from Texas Tech, and Craig being removed from calling the 2010 Alamo Bowl, which featured the Red Raiders. The allegations were that Leach forced Adam James to stand in an electrical closet for 2 hours on 2 separate occasions during practice, while Leach denied this, stating that Adam stood in there on his own volition with his cell phone. Following this firing and the announcement of a Senate campaign by James, an internet rumor began to swirl that during his time at SMU, Craig James had killed 5 hookers. This was blamed on being a smear campaign, as no real evidence emerged to support this claim. However, Mike Leach fanned the flames as a picture leaked of him signing his newly published book with the initials CJK5H, which stands for Craig James Killed 5 Hookers. While this controversy was denied as to have any impact on James's career, He ended up being let go from Fox Sports college football coverage due to his strong anti-homosexual political platform. Adrian McPherson. Adrian McPherson played quarterback for the Florida State Seminoles from 2001 to 2002. He was arrested and questioned relating to theft and forgery charges, which caused his dismissal from FSU in November of 2002. Later charges were added stating he was gambling on FSU games that he participated in. He pleaded both that charge and the check forgery charge to receive no jail time. While confirmed to be gambling on his own team while in college football, there are rumors to this day that he was throwing games as the quarterback for FSU to help settle his gambling debts. Tier 4 is going to cover widespread scandals involving specific schools, specifically with some of the more harsh and disturbing crimes they've committed in a whole. Penn State. Penn State assistant football coach Jerry Sandusky was charged with 52 counts of child molestation and convicted of 45 of these counts. These acts were committed during his time on staff for the program from 1994 to 2009. Additionally, the school's president, vice president, and athletic director were charged with perjury, obstruction of justice, failure to report child abuse, and related charges. Following an FBI investigation, it was discovered longtime Penn State coach Joe Paterno, along with the previous 3 high-ranking officials, knew and disregarded the allegations during the time Sandusky was perpetrating them. The NCAA fined the school $60 million, enforced a 4-year bowl game ban, reduced scholarships, and vacated all wins in school history between 1998 and 2011. A lawsuit was filed to defend the name of Paterno after it was discovered that the FBI investigator and the NCAA orchestrated the findings to be able to dole out punishment quickly to save face. Paterno's 111 wins were restored following the conclusion of the lawsuit, and the other 3 high-ranking school officials either had their conspiracy charges dropped or were acquitted of them. The only legal action taken on those higher-ups were that of misdemeanors of child endangerment. Baylor. From 2012 through 2019, the Baylor Bears had 3 different players involved with sexual assault cases. Tevin Elliott was accused and convicted of gruesome and violent sexual assaults that occurred between 2009 and 2012. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Sam Akuachu was a transfer from Boise State who sexually assaulted a Baylor female soccer player in 2013. He was convicted and sentenced to 180 days in prison and 10 years felony probation. The final Baylor football player to be involved with the scandal was Sean Oakman, who had transferred to Baylor after being dismissed from the Penn State football program for unrelated issues. A woman accused Oakman of sexually assaulting her in 2016, which led to his arrest, and subsequently went undrafted in the 2016 NFL Draft after being touted as high as a second-round pick. Oakman was later found not guilty in 2019. The Baylor head coach during these incidents was fired in 2016, and the president stepped down soon after. The Title IX coordinator, the woman in charge of protecting against sexual-based discrimination in schools, also stepped down, citing that she received heavy pushback when attempting to help the victims, as the higher-ups at Baylor were more concerned with protecting the brand than the students. A 2017 lawsuit alleged that between 2011 and 2014, at least 31 football players committed at least 52 rapes. Tier 5 is going to cover scandals that exclusively covers deaths and murders that happened that involved NCAA players and or had the NCAA involved. Declan Sullivan. A smart and creative 20-year-old college junior who was killed during Notre Dame football practice in 2010. He was tasked with filming the practice while up 40 feet in the air on a lift. The lift collapsed due to winds of upwards of 53 miles per hour, which caused his death. Notre Dame was found at fault for his death, and his family established a Declan Drum Sullivan Memorial Fund in his honor to help support education and community service in the Chicago area. As someone who films football practices in the lift from the end zone, this is particularly terrifying, and I can definitely see how he could have died from neglect on the team's behalf, and I'm so glad that the teams I've worked for so far have been able to take care of me and not allowed me to go up there in these kind of conditions, which was certainly Notre Dame's fault at the end of the day. Lyle Collins. Days before the 2014 NFL Draft, a former romantic fling of the projected top 15 pick was shot and killed on her doorstep in Baton Rouge. The victim was rushed to the hospital where they delivered her 8-month-old baby that Collins believed at the time could have been his child. The baby unfortunately passed away under hospital care, but with the paternity test it was proven that Collins was not the father. The night of the murder, the victim's 10-year-old child mentioned Collins' name, which brought him under suspicion, forcing him to fly back to Louisiana for questioning and to go undrafted in the NFL Draft. Collins was taken off the suspect list, but not immediately cleared completely until finally being named not a person of interest in the case. To this day, the double murder of Brittany Mills and her child has not been solved. Lauren Luther Wade. In 2005, an Arizona State running back, Lauren Wade, killed a former ASU player, Brandon Faulkner. Faulkner was shot in the head by Wade when he arrived at a club looking to pick up his girlfriend, saw her in the car with Faulkner, and shot him in the head. Following his 20-year prison sentence, it was confirmed that the shooting was an accident. As Wade attempted to punch Faulkner in the head with the gun, with it accidentally misfiring and killing the former player. Brian Pata. Brian Pata was a 22-year-old defensive tackle with the University of Miami who was looking to be selected in the 2007 NFL Draft before he was shot and killed execution style in November of 2006. Thanks to a testimony from a retired University of Miami English teacher who stayed in the same apartment complex as Pata, the police were able to identify and arrest a suspect in 2021. Rashawn Jones was an at-the-time teammate of Pata during the murder and is the man who is currently awaiting trial in the murder case. Miami played a game 4 days later and lost to 24th-ranked Maryland. The beginning of the game saw a moment of silence for their fallen senior. Luckily, Rashawn Jones did not participate in this game. Tier 6 is going to be a divergence from the typical trend we've been seeing in this Iceberg up to this point, where it's no longer deeper and darker secrets and or stories from college that get darker in subject matter or in obscurity. It goes over conspiracy theories covering some of the more darker behind-the-scenes things from college football that are trying to expose and show what kind of seedy things are happening with the higher-ups in this business. Committee tampering. The committee that votes for the final top 4 teams to play in that season's highest-profile games, aka the playoffs, consistently push to have big-brain SEC teams, usually Alabama, in the CFP. They will also work to put down smaller schools due to their lack of brand. For example, the University of Central Florida went 24-0 in the regular season from 2017 to 2019, but never ranked higher than 8th. The theory is stating that the committee actively says that they look at certain criteria but go against that to try to make the most brand and money-worthy matchups in the college football playoffs. They do this by ignoring other conference champions and trying to promote the most well-known conference, the SEC, into the playoffs, usually having 2 schools from that conference in the top 4 teams. Schools curriculum circumvention. In 2014, North Carolina was exposed for providing its student-athletes with paper classes, which were independent studies that had no faculty involvement. Also in 2014, a former tutor for the University of North Carolina, Mary Willingham, came out with allegations within a thesis paper she wrote. The allegations were that students accessed a team-maintained computer hard drive which contained a database of previous papers and submitted recycled documents with cosmetic changes. Some student-athletes reading below college levels. In an interview with CNN, Willingham claimed that 60% of 183 UNC football and basketball players, which she analyzed from 2004 to 2012, were reading at a 4th to 8th grade level, and that 10% read below a 3rd grade level. That she steered academically disadvantaged student-athletes toward enrolling in sham African-American studies lecture courses, and that the university was playing a shell game to prevent student-athletes from having to do any serious studying. In addition, there has been evidence to show that students at UNC shared a language credit in Swahili, which is presumed to be another one of these blow-off classes to get players academically eligible for the playing season. While North Carolina was caught in 2014 doing this conspiracy theory is saying that all schools are doing it, and it's very well-founded, seeing as though they thrive on pulling in money from their football program, and having these players be academically eligible is in a very strongly in their interest to do so. And the fact that they are mostly looking to make money means they're not prioritizing the students' education over their ability to play in games. 2014 Big Ten Championship. This one is one of the more out there conspiracy theories that I'm going to use to lighten the mood before we get to our final one on this iceberg. In 2014, the Big Ten Championship was between Ohio State and Wisconsin. This was the inaugural season of the college football playoffs in the 4-team system, and the Big Ten potentially didn't have a team that could reasonably be voted in outside of Ohio State. The conspiracy believes that the athletic directors of Wisconsin and Ohio State met with the president of the Big Ten with some incentives put in place for Wisconsin to throw the game. 4 days following the 59-point loss, Wisconsin's head coach, Gary Anderson, left to take the head coaching job at Oregon State, which he initially gave family reasons for, but it later came out that he was frustrated with Wisconsin's higher-ups. This would allow Ohio State to reach the 12-1 record mark, be the Big Ten champion, and represent the entire Big Ten in the college football playoffs. The way they could have went about throwing the game was by having the coaches in communication with each other concerning the plays they would call, allowing for the Ohio State defense to not allow any points for Wisconsin, and allowing for the Ohio State offense to always know what the defensive positioning was going to be and what play calls were being made by the Wisconsin defense, allowing them for easy points and easy yardage. Conspiracy surrounding the disappearance of Ray Greicher. Ray Greicher was the acting district attorney of Center County from 1996 to 2005 after moving to State College, Pennsylvania, so his then wife could take a job teaching at Penn State. During his tenure, he refused to prosecute then Penn State assistant coach Jerry Sandusky for allegations of child abuse in 1998. In April of 2005, Greicher was reported as missing after not returning home, and the police eventually found his red Mini Cooper in the parking lot of an antique store in Lewiston. Inside the car was his work-issued cell phone and indications that someone had been smoking a cigarette in the car. Greicher was not a smoker. The police dogs acted in a manner that indicated to the police that Greiker most likely got into another vehicle after abandoning this one. In late July, fishermen found Greiker's county-issued laptop in a river with the hard drive deliberately moved. An unidentified hard drive was later found 100 yards away but was so damaged it was unconfirmed to be Greiker's. Looking into Greiker's home computer search history uncovered someone searching on how to destroy a hard drive and the effects of water damage on a laptop. Due to his ties with the county as the district attorney and his calls to not prosecute Jerry Sandusky in 1998, there are theories that the disappearance and apparent death of Ray Greiker had something to do with the cover-up of the Penn State scandal. And that was my college football iceberg. I know there's a lot of stuff I missed out, and there was some stuff that didn't make the cut at the very end here. I didn't want to make this video too long and bloated, and also I could always do a part 2 later on. There were some things that got cut, such as the Auburn fire game or the barn burner game. So if you want to see more of those things talked about, leave a comment, leave a like, and then maybe I will make a follow-up to this. I'm hoping to have this out by the time the college football season starts, so if you're seeing this before then, congrats. If you're seeing this in the future, well, that kind of dates it, but whatever. That's at the end of the video anyway, so check out the other icebergs I made. I made an NFL iceberg, which I didn't write myself, and an NFL draft iceberg that I did write myself. So check those out. I'm very proud of those, as well as check out the podcast and some of the other videos I've been making. Now that I'm fully settled down in my new location, I should be able to be pumping out more videos more consistently. So until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.